Hayden Panettiere has long been a familiar face to audiences around the world, but now a deeply emotional wave of concern and confusion has surrounded the story connected to her name, especially as questions about a memorial and a final farewell continue to circulate. According to the situation suggested by the title, the most striking part is not simply the idea of remembrance itself, but the possibility that those closest to Hayden may not yet be emotionally prepared to face such a public moment. When a family is still processing an overwhelming situation, even the thought of organizing a memorial can feel impossible, because a farewell is not just an event on a calendar. It can become the moment when emotions that have been held back finally become real. For fans, the instinct is often to gather, remember, share favorite moments, and search for some form of closure. But for a family, closure does not always arrive on the same schedule as public attention. And that difference may be at the heart of why this story has created so many questions. Hayden's journey in the public eye has always been filled with moments that made people feel as though they knew her personally. From her early work as a young performer to the major roles that made her recognizable to millions, she built a career in front of an audience that watched her grow, change, struggle, and continue moving forward. That connection is powerful, but it can also create a difficult reality when deeply personal moments become subjects of public discussion. The audience may want answers immediately, while the people closest to the situation may need silence, privacy, and time. And when the conversation turns to a memorial or a final farewell, the emotional distance between those two worlds can become even more visible. A public tribute may seem like a natural next step to outsiders, but for family members, it may represent something much more difficult, accepting that a chapter of their lives has reached a point they are not ready to confront. That is why the phrase, "not ready," carries so much weight. It does not necessarily mean there is a disagreement, a secret, or a dramatic conflict behind closed doors. Sometimes it simply means that grief and emotional shock do not follow the expectations of the outside world. People process devastating moments differently. One person may want to talk, another may need silence. One may want to remember every detail, while another may find even a photograph or a familiar song too painful to face. And when an entire family is connected to someone whose life has been watched by millions, the pressure can become even greater. Every decision can be questioned. Every period of silence can lead to speculation. Every delay can create another wave of rumors. Yet silence does not always mean mystery. Sometimes, silence simply means that people are trying to survive an emotional moment in private. As the idea of remembering Hayden continues to resonate with those who have followed her career, many people may naturally wonder when a memorial could happen, who might speak, and how her life could be honored. But those questions can only be answered by the people closest to the situation, and until there is clear confirmation, it is important not to turn assumptions into facts. The public may imagine a large gathering filled with familiar faces, emotional speeches, and memories from throughout her career. But the reality could be entirely different. Some families choose private ceremonies. Others wait weeks or months before making plans. Some decide that the most meaningful tribute is not a public event at all. What matters most is that any farewell reflects the wishes and emotional readiness of the people directly affected. Hayden's story has always been more than a collection of roles and red carpet appearances. Like many people who grow up in the public eye, she has experienced the unusual challenge of having personal chapters discussed by strangers who only see fragments of a much larger picture. Fans often remember the characters, the interviews, the performances, and the moments that made them smile. Family members, however, remember something else entirely. They remember private conversations, ordinary days, inside jokes, difficult moments, and memories that will never appear in a headline. That is why a memorial can be such an emotional dividing line between public memory and private grief. The public sees a farewell as a chance to celebrate a life. The family may see it as the moment when they must stand in front of the reality they have been trying to process. And perhaps that is why the idea that they are not ready has struck such a deep emotional chord. There is also something important to remember about the word memorial. It can sound simple, almost ceremonial, But behind that word are countless decisions and emotions. Who should be present? Should it be private or public? Should friends and colleagues be invited? What memories should be shared? And perhaps the most difficult question of all, when is the right time? There may never be a perfect answer. A family can feel pressure to act quickly because the public is waiting, while at the same time feeling completely unable to take the next step. That tension can create a painful silence that outsiders may misunderstand. But emotional readiness cannot always be forced by deadlines, expectations, or public curiosity. Sometimes the most respectful thing that can happen is for the people closest to the situation to be given the time they need. For those remembering Hayden, the lasting impact of her career is likely to remain connected to the work and moments that made her meaningful to audiences. Her performances introduced her to viewers across different generations, and her public journey showed a side of fame that was never entirely simple. There were moments of celebration, challenges that became widely discussed, and periods when the attention surrounding her personal life became just as intense as the attention surrounding her work. Through all of that, one thing remained clear: people cared about her story. That is why any conversation connected to a memorial or final farewell immediately carries such emotion. It is not only about one event. It is about the memories people associate with her, the impact they believe she had on their lives, and the difficult realization that some moments are too personal to be rushed simply because the world wants to know what happens next. And so, as the questions continue, the most important answer may be the simplest one. A family deserves the right to move at its own pace. If they are truly not ready for a memorial or a final farewell, then forcing that moment before they are emotionally prepared would not make the situation easier. A farewell is supposed to honor a life, but it can also reopen emotions that have barely begun to settle. The people closest to Hayden may need time to decide what feels right, what should remain private, and how they want her story to be remembered. Until those decisions are clearly shared, speculation can only fill the empty spaces with assumptions. And assumptions are not the same as truth. For fans who want to show support, perhaps the most meaningful response is not to demand immediate answers, but to remember the moments that created the connection in the first place. Remember the performances, the personality, the journey, and the human being behind the public image. Because in the end, the most powerful farewell is not always the largest ceremony or the most widely watched memorial. Sometimes remembrance happens quietly, through a favorite scene, an old interview, a photograph, or a memory that returns unexpectedly. And perhaps that is what makes this moment so emotional. While people wait to learn whether a memorial or final farewell will take place, the story is also a reminder that public attention and private emotions move at completely different speeds. The world may be ready for a moment of closure, but those closest to Hayden may not be there yet. And until they are, the unanswered questions will remain. When will the family be ready? What kind of farewell, if any, will they choose? Will it be a private moment, a public tribute, or something entirely different? For now, only time and confirmed information can answer those questions. But one thing remains certain: Hayden Panettiere's name continues to carry memories for people who have followed her journey, and any true moment of remembrance should happen with care, dignity, and respect for those who are still trying to find the strength to say goodbye.